Well, hello everybody. This is AM Prime here on WESN. We hope everybody had a great holiday. Of course, we weren't live for the couple of days leading up to this point in the Christmas season. We hope everybody had it good. If you didn't, well, let's see how we can make it better. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for being with us. And it's good that we can continue these discussions here on the program on this station. Well, let's tell you what's happening in this edition of the program as we kick off live programming here in this year 2023. We will be talking in a moment with Mr. Timothy Hammersmith, a former member of the Senate, and somebody who's a political activist in the best of those terms we can address. We're talking about the appointment or the nominations thus far still for the next president of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. What's the process? To what extent the process is working as it was meant to be in the Constitution? So we have two persons who are listed, one by the government, one by the opposition. What are your views on that? We will talk with him over that. And the process, like I say, the main issue here is how we go about selecting or leading figures in the public life in Trinidad and Tobago. We're also talking in the second hour with Mr. Kelvin Morris. He's a minority leader at the THA. And what he has in mind for Better Tobago from his perspective, we will get to him when that time comes. In the middle of that, we're talking also with Mr. Rushton Parry. He's the Member of Parliament in that area, in Tabaquite and Mayaro, in fact, Mayaro. He is saying that we have to face more hardship in this year than we did last year. And he's outlined that on a broad slate of what he says will happen and what will not happen in terms of making our lives better. We will get to him for that discussion in a moment. But stay with us. We're coming back with the live programming here on WESN. This is AM Prime, just beginning. Stay with us.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
All right, welcome back. Well, let's give you part of the background to the story. The Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, on Friday named the President of the Senate, Christine Kangaloo, as the government's nominee to replace Paula May Weeks as the 7th head of state of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The announcement followed a meeting between the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, former Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar. She later told reporters she shared her concerns regarding, quote, an active politician holding the post, and that she strongly objects to the nomination. In the meantime, the opposition has nominated Senior Counsel Israel Khan as their person for the top job in the country as president. To talk with us about the process and the namings and the nominees, former President of the Senate, Timothy Hamler-Smith. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to all your viewers. Nice to be with you, Andy.
Thank you very much. Well, sentiments shared. So let's start with the process. I tell you, my understanding or how I see it is that if there's to be a discussion between both sides, there must be a discussion, to me, before you get to put a name on a piece of paper. To me, you had to have some discussion. Well, who is the best person at any point in time to fill that position? So there will be names and nominees on both sides. And you come down to someone about whom there's mutual agreement. My understanding is that is not what happens. You have a situation in which each side comes with a name in their pocket and they put it down on the table and they discuss that. Well, let's talk about that.
Well, I think what you hit the nail on the head when you said process is the important thing. And if you're going to put process first, then rather than identify personalities, I think the process should require what are your expectations of a president of Trinidad and Tobago? That's where you start. It's just like if you had a job, if you're for which at your office in which you were seeking somebody. First of all, you want to know what do I want out of this person for this job before you start to identifying people. So I think very often we start at the wrong end, and therefore we, at very least, you'd think that if we started with what does the process require, what do we want to see in a president, you might get consensus around that. But if you don't start there, then politicians being politicians, I doubt you'd get very much consensus if you just put personalities on the table.
Yeah, so that the intention of how this thing was framed, that is not being met, that is not being addressed at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's my view. I mean, a lot of these posts that have to be filled, that the president himself or herself now has to fill, to my mind, requires, first of all, look at what the constitutional requirements are, look to see what the responsibilities of office are in that particular position, what competencies, what qualifications are required, and then you make a short list of persons that you can identify who fulfill those ingredients. That's the way, to my mind, to go about filling these roles. we seem to start at the wrong end.
And is it at all rectifiable if prominent citizens could continue to insist and point this out to both sides, that this is not the way to go?
Well, I don't know. Maybe at some time this can come home to those who are responsible. To talk about process, if you ask me, one of the most important functions, if you like, of a president is that he must seek to unify the country. That's an underlying role, which is a very difficult thing in Trinidad and Tobago, understandably. But certainly if you chose people that were aligned to one party or the other, then you start off on a footing that is not going to lead to consensus, I'm sure. But it's more than that. It sends a message for the whole of the presidency that this is a partisan affair. And that's really sad, because there's a lot, I think, that in our country that we need to have united. And if a president can fulfill that function, it would more than have paid for, we complain that this is a high-paying job, and do we get value for money? And if we could do that, then you start on the right footing in terms of unifying the country. In fact, if you look at Dominica's website, I remember doing that, what is required of a president, you will see exactly that, the most important role of the president. Yes, there are functions that have to be performed, but the actual bringing people together is so, therefore you need to think in terms of what things should I do in order to seek to bring unity to the nation.
Right. In my own estimation, Ms. Kangaloo is very wholesome, very welcoming. She's not brittle as a politician or anything like that, but she's not going to be able to achieve that if going in the opposition is that because she's still too close to the ruling party. She's been a member of the ruling party for a long time. She's been in and out of the parliament. She's the president of the Senate. She was the president of the Senate yesterday, and days from now she's going to become president. And people are saying that is not how it should happen, and so that her time in office is not going to be as luminous as it should be because of that alone, not having nothing to do with her and her personality and her image in the country. Correct?
That's part of what I'm saying. She's now had, perhaps one hand tied behind her back. She starts regardless of her potential, she starts with a limitation, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
If she's able to overcome that, that depends a lot. But, the bar is set so much higher for her to do so.
They're going to be, if one side insists on plucking people from the politics, as it were, it's not going to happen. So there's no period in which you could see that she has been away from active politics for some period of time, whoever it is. And why is the ruling party not seeing that and seeing these are missed opportunities for getting these things right?
Yes. As I say, I certainly feel the process is so important to arrive at the right individual. I have certainly nothing against Ms. Kangaloo. I'm sure she's a very accomplished person. I'm sure, I don't know her personally, so I can't talk to her personality. But I certainly think that what I've seen of her background, you might have the competency, but the real heart of what one's expectations are becomes so much more difficult to achieve if, in fact, you are seen by the partisan as a partisan individual. And there's therefore a lot more work for her to accomplish that than needed to be the case.
Yes, because almost nothing she says or does will find favor with a broad section of the society, precisely because of the way in which she's been, elevated to this position, and from where she comes immediately before taking this position.
Yeah. So she will struggle to reach that point. I don't know, there are things perhaps one can do to bring around the nation to recognize that you are stepping beyond the pale of party politics. But it becomes a high bar to cross.
Yeah, but it could be done, it should be done. And the other side, the opposition proposes a name, another senior counsel. So you come with one name and I come with one name. Or what sort of negotiations what sort of process that will promote it? None.
Yeah. Well, that's it. As I say, it's the qualities you're looking for. What are the objectives? These are the things you should be speaking about to gain consensus over before making an appointment. And the parties don't seem to start at that. Neither party has started at that level.
That's the point. Everybody comes with a name in a pocket and puts it on the table, both sides at least, and yeah. So the discussions really turned out to be a kind of a sham.
Yeah, it certainly is. That's how I view it. I think that they started at the wrong end. Even if one party started in a certain direction, the other certainly could have brought to the table, look, this is what we see the role of the president is. This is what we'd like to accomplish. These are the objectives in mind. Then you stand much better chance, at least getting consensus on those issues.
Yeah, and let there be some kind of a proper discussion. But so let's look at what has happened now. So Ms. Kangaloo is going to go forward. She has the majority of the votes in the parliament, so she'd be there. She'd become the second head of state in a row to be the outgoing president, Paul Emery, now becomes the second head of state in a row to be a one-term head of state.
Yes, that's very unfortunate. If you look at what people are saying about the president, and you see talk about, should we have an executive president? Do we need a president? And that is going to become more and more so, I imagine, by the end of this presidency. My own view is, in fact, the president has a very important role to play as a check and balance in the Constitution, if performed, properly. I would, in fact, my preference would be, because there's to add to the responsibility of the president. And frankly, if you reach that point, then have the president elected by the public.
Yeah, so
that's what's in fact done in Singapore. And the president has significant powers there. It's not that I would necessarily want to have the same sort of powers in our president, but certainly I think you wanted to go beyond the ceremonial to have a much more substantive role in the country. And again, a role that will enable a unifying effect.
Yeah, and that will be moving towards this idea of an executive president. Some people are saying that there are dangers in that. We should be careful how we wish for that.
Yeah. Well, I don't support the executive presidency. So I didn't mean by adding substantive roles.
Yeah.
So I agree with the Prime Minister as we have it. I think if you had an executive presidency, given our party system, the president would have far too much power, quite frankly. And that's not the direction I think that we should go in. But I do, subscribe to the notion that one needs to add to the role of the president to have far more functions, as it were. And therefore, for people to recognize that this is a substantive post to which the president contributes.
Yes, but how we understand and construe our parliamentary democracy, it doesn't sort of provide for that expansion and the role and function of the president, right?
Well, that is true to a certain degree. I don't see the president having a added role that I would like to see is, I certainly believe we need fiscal responsibility legislation, for instance, to act as a counterbalance to the parliament, to the politicians. And what you get is there's no guidance, there are no limits, there are no targets that we set for ourselves. And if the country is to do well economically, we need to have not this type of, particularly when you have a boom and bust type of economy. When oil is up, we're up, and we spend all the money, and you need to even it out. The fiscal responsibility is intended to achieve that objective. And I can see a president having a role in that. The fiscal councils that come out of a fiscal responsibility legislation. But it doesn't have to be that. I'm just putting forward that as a suggestion.
As a proposal.
Yeah, and that would, all we had before, as you recall, it's unfortunate we had Dr. Farrell was the head of the chairman of the Economic Development and Advisory Board. I would like to see a statutory board created by constitution so that, they can't compel the parliament what to do, but what they have to say at least gets debated in the parliament. And perhaps the president could have a role in that particular type of arrangement where what you're doing is building and developing the country. And perhaps even more than fiscal, a development role for the president in that particular arena. Regardless of what you do with the president, I think those two features of our jurisprudence is very, very necessary if we are to get a transformation of the economy.
Yeah, but the politicians don't seem to favor that at all. But even notwithstanding that, a lot of people say that, the president, his or her powers, the office of the president is very limited and constricted. But is it not the case that there are a lot of things that would not happen if the president does not consent to? Or is the president duty bound to consent to matters coming to the office?
Yes, but I mean, there are, the president does play an important role. People tend to forget the fact that at any time, you will recall when certain legislation has come to the parliament, people say they're looking to the independent senators to save the country. I mean, that's happened on a number of occasions. Yes. And it is only when that happens you recognize how important the role is of the president in nominating 9 independent senators. And I think that's one of the checks and balances that we've brought into the system that is very important. But then you have to ask yourself the question, well, if people don't think the president is independent, are they going to have high regard for the president's choice of senators, independent senators? But that is an extremely, I think the Constitution got that right in terms of the check and balance that the independent senators' role have. And there are other checks and balances that we need. And I think fiscal responsibility is one of those. There's a sense that we undertake projects in Trinidad and Tobago without carrying out any kind of analysis, a cost-benefit analysis. And, politicians just choose a project because they feel that it's vote-catching, as opposed to, is it necessary, is it helpful, is it country building, is it development in the sense of that the country will benefit from that particular project.
Right.
And those things need to be built into the system.
Right.
Politicians don't like that because it's a check and balance on them. And I do think that I have no problem with the politician having the final say. Again, it comes down to process.
Yeah.
You have to go through a certain analysis before you achieve an objective.
It takes us back a little bit to when the late N.R. Robinson, or Arthur N.R. Robinson, was president of the country, and there was this. He'd been appointed in a government led by Vazir Pandey, with whom he'd helped form the government. But then he was saying the issue came about. He said that there was a kind of reluctance on the prime minister then to his role of advising and warning about what was happening, and the thing. The process requires the prime minister to meet with the president in a certain kind of regularity, whether once a week or twice a month, as the case may be, and that appeared to not to be what was happening. And he said that you are neglecting your responsibility in terms of my role to advise and warn, and some things were wrong. And that's when he talked about streams turning into rivers and rivers turning into seas as to what was happening. But this is as we have it.
I think that has been going on for a long time. This question of not having the kind of interplay between president and prime minister. You will see in the memoirs of Sir Ellis Clarke, he references the fact that Dr. Williams and himself did not have the kind of interplay that he expected. But more reason why, if you have a say as a president in let's say the economic development and advisory board type of function, if you had a part in that, then you could put forward, issues that you would otherwise want to speak about in a one-on-one situation, and you would achieve that objective through a substantive role that is created for this purpose. And of course, that's not a standalone role. I see the president could be chairman of that, but she would have a council that aided her in relation to that. And if you choose people, as we have done in the past, who are seen as like Dr. Farrell, who are seen and not, are not politically biased, and therefore have the country's interest at heart in terms of what recommendations they make. I think that would be a substantial advantage to Trinidad and Tobago. But of course, that's some way off. But I actually would like to see the president have a more substantive role rather than less.
All right. Well,
but again, it comes down to choice and the process.
Certainly.
In what?
Well, let's hope somebody is listening and is minded to take this on board as we go forward. But thank you very much, sir, Timothy Amblesman.
Thank you. It's great being with you, Andy, and I look forward to the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to your viewers.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we share with you some stuff from around the region before we get to our next guest, Mr. Kelvin Morris, Minority Leader in the Tobago House of Assembly. Stay with us. This is AM Prime here on WESN.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day.
I live with my dad at the time, so what is he going to say? He has invested so much into me and into my studies and, you know, where I was going in life, and then, you know, to come to him with these news. So the first thing I did legit after finding out I was pregnant was actually trying to make a call to see how I could get rid of it.
Which is that we shouldn't condemn others for the mistakes that they would have made.
Whether it's your savings or the business savings, deduct a small amount first and set it aside for a rainy day.
Replaying situations in your mind, questioning yourself if you did or said something wrong, pushes you right into the circle of anxiety.
From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to the program. Moments from now, we'll be talking with Mr. Kelvin Morris. He's the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly, what he wants to see happen in the sister island in the year 2023. But before we get to that, let's take a look at what's happening in St. Lucia and our first look around the region in this edition of the program. The Ministry of Health there on Friday said it reminded the public and education stakeholders of the prevention and control of guidelines to mitigate the spread of infectious diseases. HTS News Force has a report.
With thousands of students scheduled to return to the classroom, the Ministry of Health has issued some pointers to learning institutions, students, families, and the public writ large. Health officials warn that historically, the post-holiday period is synonymous with increased infections, hence the need for adherence to prevention and control measures. They stressed that it is not just about COVID.
In preparation of the reopening of schools scheduled for Monday, January 9, 2023, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs takes this opportunity to remind parents, principals, teachers, caregivers, auxiliary staff and students of school-specific guidelines in the prevention and control of infectious diseases. These include respiratory illnesses and gastroenteritis. The Ministry of Health usually notes an increase in cases of infections after the festive season.
So what are the telltale symptoms that parents should pay close attention?
If your child develops symptoms including coughing, runny nose, sore throat, fever, vomiting, and diarrhea, seek medical care and do not send the child to school until they have been resolved. Wash your hands often with soap and flowing water for at least 20 seconds. To reduce the spread of infections, be sure to wash your hands after using the bathroom, before and after caring for the sick, and after playing or caring for animals.
While COVID-19 protocols have been relaxed for the most part, schools are still required to comply with mask-wearing guidelines, especially for assemblies and various activities.
Ensure that children are provided with clean face masks for school. Ensure regular cleaning of surfaces and sanitization of all schools and environments.
All right, from that, we come back to the live discussion here on the program. This edition, we're talking now with the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Kelvin Morris. He says he's hoping that all of Tobago would enjoy a successful 2023. And that's in a discussion he had with the Newsday newspaper over the last couple of days. And he said he hoped that there will be safe and secure, and or safety and security and prosperousness for the people in this island, where systems of governance will function in the best interest of all residents at all times. That and more. Mr. Kelvin Morris, good to see you, sir. Happy New Year.
Good to see you, Andy. Good morning to you, and let me also wish you Happy New Year and all the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much. You say our focus will be on using the various agencies of state to render support to those vulnerable in the society. You say your focus is going to be on the vulnerable. How do you set about doing that? Is that not really centrally the role and function of the administration?
Yes, of course, Andy. But what we have seen, people in Tobago have been really disappointed with the governance of this new administration, to the point they have already dismissed them. And I've said to myself, rather than focus on complaining, I will focus on seeing how I can utilize private resources as well as public resources to ensure that we refocus and assist those persons who cannot help themselves. So when I said the public sources, you have institutions such as self-help. You have institutions such as in the Division of Health, there are a number of programs there. And I'm also going to be collaborating. I've already started collaborating with a number of private entities to ensure that we can provide food support. Just last week, we did about 20 hampers, and we're going to expand that kind of support. So you would see me in the coming weeks. We are doing a food and clothing drive, and what we plan to do is have centralized pop-up shops, one in the north, one in the east, and one in the west, that would cater to vulnerable families, at-risk families, socially deprived. I am really going to focus on people, refocus on people, because we recognize in Tobago the political directorate, the people who are in charge, just do not have a clue.
You say that the people have already dismissed the leadership in the assembly?
Definitely, and I'm not just speaking by hearsay, but there are empirical data. Recently, the Tobago CivilNet, I'm not too sure if you got a chance to view that poll, would have polled a wide cross-section of Tobago. And based on the sample size, they were able to get contribution from all electoral districts. And the poll was very decisive in terms of what it said. The majority of Tobagonians in that poll said that they found this government to be performing poorly, and very poor at that. And therefore, when you walk the length and breadth of Tobago, that sentiment reverberates. So it is a point where we know that the government is going to be here for another 3 years, or all things being equal. Therefore, we cannot just lie down and watch our Tobago economy continue to crash. We as the people need to now find ways and means, find creative ways and means as to how we govern or allow Tobago to move forward, even in the midst of a failing government.
So what if let's say an election were to be called now or in the next couple of weeks? You're saying that the people, from what you sense, is that the people will turn their backs on the current administration?
Well, it's clear. The people are saying that they are completely disappointed with what is passing for governance. Everything that was promised, they are turning around and do quite the opposite. In fact, they promised transparency. There's no transparency in the award of contracts. They promised accountability. There's no accountability in the way they govern. They promised to be there with the people. The people are now saying there was a question asked in the poll, and they asked, how accessible is your current representative in the THA? And the people would have said overwhelmingly that they are very unreachable. And that is a talk on the ground in Tobago. You can't get them by phone. They are barely having public days where the public can go in and see them. And even when you make the time and go there, they are not available. And you are seeing where they are promising people things and they're just not delivering. We have a situation right now. The people would have been promised on the election campaign something called an ex gratia payment. You would have seen, and that was to be delivered December 25th, 2021. December 25th, 2022 has come and gone. And the people of Tobago, the THA workers, have still not received that ex gratia. And mind you, the government came a whole year after, promised ex gratia to the health workers, and that has been paid. Yet the people in Tobago, the THA workers, are still waiting on that promise. There's little to nothing that has been promised that has been delivered. The only promise that has been kept is the promise to fire persons that they believe are PNM, totals of PNM party cards.
All right. So what do you make of, I imagine you saw it, this, the presentation by the Chief Secretary in which he put the situation in Tobago in terms of baking a cake, and he says, you have to put certain ingredients into it. It takes a while. You have to do the right mix. Some things might go wrong, but the patience at the end of the day is what pays off. What do you make of his presentation like that?
Well, any good baker knows precision and time. So if you're taking too long with a cake, once you put it in the oven, it will flop, and that is what is happening right now, because they don't have a clue. The cake maker, the chief cake mixer, does not have a clue about baking cake, and I'm talking about governance in this instance. The chief secretary is clueless. The people in Division of Finance are telling you they do not know what is happening. We are having problems with simple things as managing bank accounts where checks are bouncing, and this is under the management of this chief secretary who happens to be the Secretary of Finance. Divisions are having issues with the way monies are being allocated, so they can't pay suppliers. And I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating. I just want you to come to Tobago and listen. It is a complete mess when we talk about how things are being managed in the divisions. You have things where we would have had carnival, and today there are a number of suppliers of services, the Calypsonians, the persons who would have put on events, who would have been promised different assistance. They are still waiting, and we are going into a period where we are going to spend another $9 million on carnival. We have the government here in Tobago, the THA administration. They, after prodding and pleading, they would have onboarded 500 young men and women to work for 1 month before the Christmas. And we are now in January, and they've relieved these young men to go back to their various blocks and various homes idle. And I'm saying the chief secretary would have pontificated and said one of the main issues that drives crime is this situation of unemployment. And if you understand that, why would you engage persons for 1 month and not find a sustainable arrangement to keep them going? I'm saying you can take them 5 days on and have them work 5 days off. And this way you keep the people going while you find a more meaningful way to have persons engaged and employed. The private sector right now is very static and stagnant. There's little to any economic movement in Tobago. The tourism sector is at an all-time low, and there's no clue as to how to have it restarted again. When you see the cruise ships come in, Scarborough is a complete mess. The place is unclean. It's the worst you have seen Scarborough in a long time. There's no proper cleaning. Persons are complaining about how we are maintaining the fort. the forts are overgrown. This administration, the cake baker, has failed, and it's time for us to look for a new manufacturer of cakes.
So what is the mechanism by which that you're going to use to get those state agencies that you say, my sense is that you're saying that these agencies are willing and ready and standing by to provide support to your side?
Definitely. So my approach is very simple. It's an all of community, all of Tobago approach. So it's about collaboration, it's about communication, it's about bringing the people to the table, and it's all about problem identification as well. So as we identify the problem, we assess who are the stakeholders who can assist in alleviating the problem, and we bring them to the table. We tell them what the problem is and see how they can contribute in solving the problem. So let's say, for example, we want to treat with home improvement. We know in Tobago, if you are treating with home improvement, you need to get the hardwares involved. We also know that we need to get the grant assistance people involved, so we look at self-help in this case. We know that there are other entities, private, that would assist with, contributing. We'll bring them together, and then we'll create a system where we can channel the persons, identify the persons who need that kind of assistance, and therefore then put the process in terms of implementing such. And it goes throughout. In terms of tourism, we now have a situation of where we really need to treat urgently with product development, how we develop and further add value to our sites and attraction. Therefore means that we have to pull in our stakeholders there and look at where the world is moving when it comes to sites and attraction, and what are the kind of things we need in Tobago. And therefore then we also engage persons who can provide those services. So that is the kind of arrangement that as minority I would be focusing on. Less complaining, more action orientation and doing, and really trying to get Tobago moving again, even from the position of opposition, as some people would say.
All right. And so where will the resources come from? How are you assured that there'll be, in the final analysis, money is the lubricator for all these things? How do you get funds to pay for these services?
Well, in the first instance, that's why we are relying heavily on what the state has to offer, because we know that there are a lot of assistance available in various forms through in Tobago, the business development unit. You have all the social assistance programs and so forth. But you have to really be able to be aware that it exists. So it's more now aligning persons to where opportunities are. And of course, there are good Samaritans out there. So it's also about engaging the private sector, because we are saying if we have to get Tobago moving again, then it means that we must all come together and we all must throw something into the pot. So even me at the personal level, whatever resources I have, I continue to use from it to help others. And I'm calling on the private Tobago, private Trinidad and Tobago. So let us all put something in the pot to ensure that we can develop Tobago. Because when we develop Tobago, especially Tobago tourism sector, we are talking about a holistic kind of improvement for all of Trinidad and Tobago. We are talking about foreign exchange, something that is a very scarce commodity. I saw just last week where in Barbados, there was a situation where there were over about 6 cruise ships docking at the one time. And the gentleman there who was narrating, he was saying that on average, 2,000 persons would come off of each cruise ship. And we're talking, let's say if it's 5, that's 10,000 persons. And even if 10,000 persons spend as little as $100 US, that is almost 1 million or so US dollars that would be spent in a day on just taking cruise tours and that kind of thing. So you can see quickly how the spin-off effect of such a situation. And therefore, if we can get Tobago going in terms of tourism, if we can get cruise ships coming and international arrivals coming and persons having average spends of up to 150 US, that would help our foreign exchange balance of trade here in Trinidad and Tobago.
So you're talking about a situation in which the opposition side has a plan and wants to move ahead and is moving ahead with that for the benefit of the people in Tobago, as opposed to the people in the administration.
Clearly, because they don't have a clue. There's no strategic plan. I've been calling on them. I've been asking them. I said, where's your plan? Where's your, any serious government, anybody going to treat with anything will have a plan. And therefore, that plan underpins all your policies and how you implement those policies. But at this point, I've not heard a plan articulated. And I'm saying we cannot wait on them to get around to that waiting of the cake. Rome is burning while the baker is preparing this cake, and we cannot wait. So in the interim, I am showing them that we are not just walking the talk, but we are not just talking the talk, but we'll also walk the talk, and we will show them that things can happen. And we, from the seat of the minority, we are putting things in place to have the economic wheels of Tobago turning again.
All right, you mentioned YTEP. You say that you'll be collaborating with YTEP to provide training and skills development opportunities for young people who are unemployed or underemployed. To what extent that is already in process? How certain are you that will kick off?
So that is already in train at my district level. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to launch the first of 2 YTEP programs specific to the electoral district of the Arab Spring WIM, because WIM is one of those at-risk areas in Tobago where we would have seen some level of criminal activity upsurge, and one of those areas where there's high unemployment as well. So we will be we went to the district, and we brought the young people together, and we listened to them as to what they are most interested in. And they were the ones who informed us as to what they want to do. And I've been saying to this administration, we can use apprenticeship and training to engage some of those idle minds and idle hands. And it's about understanding what the needs of Tobago lies right now, and providing the kind of training to support those needs. And I've been saying to them, let us get together. Get persons from about 17 to up towards the 30, to get them engaged, collaborate with the private sector. Let us perhaps have a sort of semi-OJT program, training apprenticeship program, where we help the private sector engage young people, employed, actively employed, gainfully employed, trained. And so it's a win-win, because the private sector gets some of their labor costs subsidized. And we, as an administration, we as Tobagonians, we have Tobago young people engaged. And for some reason, that has not found favor, but you're recognizing that they're finding monies to go on, I would say, projects that may be needed, but they are not priority. And they're spending, we have already identified where they have siphoned over $300 million to their favored friends and financiers in Trinidad, even at the own detriment of Tobago-based contractors who can do the job. And we have absolutely no issue with Trinidad contractors participating in the development of Tobago, because we are Trinidad and Tobago. But we are saying, if you want to build the economy of Tobago, where the opportunities are such that the contractors in Tobago can do those jobs, it makes proper sense to engage those contractors, because they are resident here. They are employing employees right here. They will buy from the hardware, and so you build and expand your economy. You create economic activity within your own space. So we are seeing that they're really clueless, and because they're clueless, we cannot lie down and roll over. We have to get up. We have to be active, and this minority, as small as it is actively engaging in such activities.
All right, Mr. Morris, thank you very much. Kelvin Morris, Minority Leader in the Tobago House of Assembly. Thank you very much for talking with us. As we head up to
Thank
the
you,
hour,
Andy. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. As we head up to the top of this hour, let's take you further afield on a story that is developing. It's a big one, the situation in China. And the authorities there have lifted quarantine requirements for inbound travelers on Sunday, ending almost 3 years of self-imposed isolation, even as the country battles a surge in COVID cases. And the question of people leaving China, going elsewhere, is an international story. Let's take a look at this.
The gate to mainland China reopens. These travellers wanted to be among the first to cross over from Hong Kong.
I'm so happy and excited. I haven't seen my parents for many years. They're not in good health, and I couldn't go back to see them even when they had cancer.
I can't wait to go back to the mainland. It's been 3 years. We have no time to waste now the border is open again.
A gradual reopening means land crossings with the enclave are still capped at 50,000 per day. Half of the quota was already filled in the morning. After almost 3 years of virtual self-isolation, China has lifted a requirement on travellers coming from abroad to quarantine for up to 28 days. This also makes it easier for Chinese people to go abroad on holiday or on business. However, abrupt changes to the zero-COVID policy led to a spike in infections, prompting more than a dozen countries to impose new entry restrictions on travellers coming from China. There are fears the Lunar New Year travel rush could worsen the situation, with 2 billion trips expected to be made during the holiday period. The airline industry has had little time to prepare. International flights to and from China were at just 8% of pre-pandemic levels at the end of December, and are expected to remain low for the coming weeks.
All right, so on the other side of this, we'll be talking with Mr. Rushton Parry, Member of Parliament, who says that things are going to get worse in Trinidad and Tobago over the next 12 months. But we take a pause. Stay with us. This is AM Prime on a new day.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to the program. With us now, Mr. Rushton Parry. He's the Member of Parliament for Mayaro. He put out a statement a couple of days ago saying that things are going to get even tougher in Trinidad and Tobago in this year than they were last year. He said, this was a time of reflection and review, excitement and emotion. While we indulge in the customs of the season, I ask that we brace for a 2023 of further decline in the national economy, expressed in weakening trade, contracting of the small business sector, and higher unemployment, among a number of other sort of gloomy predictions. He's with us now to discuss that, expand on that. Good morning, so good to see you.
Hi, good morning, Andy, and welcome, and Happy New Year 2023, and all the blessings to your viewers and listeners this morning.
Well, thank you very much, but one wonders how much of that is there going to be if things happen as you outline?
Well, where we are today, it didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen last week. What we've had is a successive progression of missteps, bad policy decisions by the state. Landing in government in 2015, I think the administration took the wrong approach by stifling the economy for months, and they created an environment of mistrust, uncertainty, and that has basically killed the private sector investment since 2015. When you look at the run-up to 2020, and then you had the issues of the pandemic, you come out of the pandemic, primarily the economy is basically open back up, but there are clear things that are missing in terms of the concept of diversification, which is really a bigger need for economic transformation. We had an economic transformation advisory board that was scuttled, and that was the administration's own technocrats, their own people who would have understood, who were supposed to understand PNM's economic policy. Their report was thrown in a bin, and there is such a progressive silence from the state on what we are going to be doing about the storms that are coming. And it has even become worse when you look at what's happening with the second outpouring of the COVID issues in China. You have major cities in China in total lockdown. Shanghai, I understand about 80% of the population of 24 million people in Shanghai is COVID positive. You have 10,000 businesses that have been literally shut down for weeks going into months in Shanghai. Now that will interfere with global supplies, it's going to interfere with shipping. You have the Russian-Ukraine conflict with high energy prices. You have supply chain issues coming out of Europe. So, but there is a silence from the state, Andy, in how are we going to weather this storm. And as we enter 2023, we layer all of that with a prospective increase of up to 160% on electrical charges for commercial and industrial customers, 60% for private individuals. You have an impending water rate increase. You have an impending property tax charge that is coming on stream. It was catered for in the 2022-23 fiscal for about $500 million. And then you have the uncertainty of an additional change to fuel cost. Now, again, you pile all of that on the citizenry, it is going to put us in some problem. And hence, my conversation in the new year, that it may all not be what the Prime Minister said, that things are looking up, rather that things may be looking down more for the citizens because of the silence of the state in policy directions going forward into 2023.
Yeah, and I suppose it's your job to point out what may be on the other side of that. Where is the Prime Minister and where are his people getting this sense of optimism from then?
Well, clearly the Minister of Finance is projecting, coming off of the $2 billion that he says went in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which is basically a fraction of our energy earnings. Now, we have received some increase in energy earnings over the last year and a half, but it has nothing to do with PNM's ingenuity or innovativeness. It is just the world prices. Energy prices are really soaring on the base of the war that's happening in Ukraine. So there is nothing to boast about. Now, if I were to take you back to the 2022-2023 fiscal proposal by the finance minister, he did cater that there will be an increase in energy revenues in 2023 going into 2024. Now, that is a good thing in terms of the state coffers. But if you look at that same report, even with the increase in energy revenue, we will still be at a deficit of $1 billion at the end of 2023. Now, my concern here, Andy, is how do you, as a policy director, Minister of Finance, not look at policy to make sure that we do not end up in a deficit position with this pending increase in energy collections and energy rent? What it means is that we have not moved away from this system where we depend solely on energy rents to direct our economy. That being said, the Prime Minister came out a couple of years ago and, he had this song and dance about diversification. All we're talking about diversification. But what the Prime Minister missed is that we need some diversification, but it must be on a platform of economic transformation. I'll just give you one example before we move on, Andy.
Yeah.
We've been belting this cat about agriculture. We need to feed ourselves. We still have over $1 billion requirement for food annually in this country. That has not shaken in any reasonable way over the last 7 years. But agriculture is not only about growing more food. It's about how do we transform the sector. We have a challenge today where we have less arable land. You find, like in North Trinidad, at the bottom of the northern range, where you have the best alluvial soil because of how the water runs and so on. So we have a challenge with good soil. We have a challenge with water. Today in 2023, agriculture requires less water, less soil due to aquaponics, hydroponics, vertical farming. Have we done anything like that in a measurable economic transformation way in this country in the last 7 years? We've talked about it. We see some small businesses are doing bits and pieces of it, but nothing at a state level that has transformed the sector. And that is what I mean by diversification versus economic transformation.
Are we saying that these things are prerequisites for better results in agriculture? That's what you're saying?
Absolutely. We do not have to reinvent the wheel here in Trinidad and Tobago. We just have to take a very critical look at what Holland is doing, what China is doing in Africa. They are changing the concept of growing food. We complain about people not getting state land. Farmers can't get state land 15, 20 years after. But I can take one lot of land through hydroponic, through vertical farming, and give you 10 acres of production going up vertically. Now, it is not as easy as it sounds. It requires technology, it requires investment, but we have the capacity. We have $8 to $10 billion sitting in commercial banks every month when you look at the cash balances in commercial banks. We are outputting hundreds of young people out of UTT in biotechnology, biochemistry, all the science that our farmers require to move down that way. But it requires state intervention in terms of policy. And that was the crux of my delivery on my New Year's message, that if these things are not done now, it should have been done before. But as we enter 2023, where are our technocrat possession in dealing with these matters? And that is the silence that is worrying, Andy. That's the silence that should be worrying to all reasonably sensed people in this country.
And what your guess is that the technocrats aren't coming forward because they're not as enthusiastic for reasons that they can probably explain best, depending on what, in contradiction to what the government is saying?
No, I feel we have some of the brightest people in Trinidad and Tobago. But you have an administration that has lost the trust and confidence of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You have technical officers who are scared. They are scared to sit at meetings with ministers of government. The Prime Minister himself comes out as this autocratic dictator. I understand, from good source, I have a few friends who tell me that when the Minister of Finance sits down at Central Bank, the man is a literal bully, nobody wants to speak. So while we may have bright people, our technical officers are bright people who have led us for many, many years, there is a certain sense of suppression in good ideas. And if you speak against government policy, as bad as it may be, you may find yourself in a doghouse somewhere in the corner office, close the door to get rid of you. So that perhaps is the reason why some of these things are not coming out. And I must tell you this as well. And we come back to the Minister of Finance being the man who has to lead economic policy, and we got it wrong. The first thing we got wrong in 2015 is when the Minister of Finance intervened in the central bank and got rid of the governor of the central bank. Now, I am not going to go down the road as to the reasons he got rid of the governor and so on, but the appeal court in Trinidad ruled that the minister and the president at that time was wrong. And I'm going with the legal aspect here, right? But what has happened over the last 7 years? The central bank, which ought to be an independent institution, have now been turned into the Ministry of the Central Bank. The fingers and the arms and the legs of the Minister of Finance now sits in central bank. And there's a difference between what the central bank ought to be doing and what the executive ought to be doing. The central bank has to decide if and when and how to create new money, stabilize prices, look at fiscal and other monetary policies to stabilize the economy. The state, vis-a-vis the cabinet and the Minister of Finance, his job is to decide spending, distribution of the money, taxation levels, how public sector investment must grow into the economy and definitely borrowing. How do we borrow? When do we borrow? But what we have now is a minister who goes into the central bank and fiddles with the data. And if you look at the Express today, I have a second page or a third page coverage on what I said yesterday at the opposition press briefing, which is similar in tone to my release on New Year's. But 2 pages down, the IDB has an article that 2022 has seen a vast amount of exports, which is a bit contradictory to what I said. But I'll explain that to you. The IDB doesn't take data from the air, they take data from central bank. And what the minister has done over the last few years, Andy, he has changed the rubric in how the reporting is done. So a lot of energy exports are now treated as non-energy. So when you talk about the manufacturing sector has had a huge increase, what they've really done is that they moved some of the energy products into the non-manufacturing category, and that has shot up at the end of the day. And on top of that, when you had an economy that was basically stagnated for over a year and a half during the pandemic, any economy will start off and show some increases as soon as the pandemic issues are over. But when you look at it and measure it to pre-pandemic level, we're still nowhere where we ought to be. And these things are it has to be dealt with at a policy level. And I'm not saying that policy is not being created, But I am not hearing it. I am not seeing it in the newspaper. I am not hearing it articulated in the parliament. And there's a silence that really causes a bit of the uncertainty that private sector would like to get rid of to be able to work with the state to help build this new transformation in the economy.
Some of what you're saying, some of what you're saying about what you're alleging the Minister of Finance as having done in the central bank, that is coming from your own analysis. You're looking at the numbers and the methods by which the information comes out, or are there people who are sort of protesting and saying these things? People in the central, the technocrats there.
No. The technocrats are silent on the matter, and that is what is worrying. Well, I shouldn't say that is not worrying. When you have in the government service, you have officers in the Ministry of Works, right here in the Mayaro constituency in County Mayaro, that refuses to complain that the fact that they can't get a wheelbarrow, a shovel, and asphalt to fix the roads here in Mayaro. They refuse to complain. But yet when I complain to the minister, then there is the MP is being political on the matter. You have nurses and doctors who cannot complain about the lack of fluid, the lack of chemicals in the dialysis unit from time to time in Rio Claro, but they can't complain. You have principals and teachers who are having problems in schools, but they can't complain because of the law, because of the legislation that prohibits public officers from speaking in the public, otherwise they can be reprimanded at the end of the day. But they are constituents, they reach out to me privately and they list the concerns at the end of the day. So really and truly, the central bank, these issues are from my observation, when you look at the details in the central bank report. When you have a minister of government who keeps the Article 4 people from the IMF away for 2 years, so they don't look at the data, that is a dictatorship that is happening. And these are all happening under the watchful eye of a prime minister who has to take full responsibility for every single thing that happens in this country. But we are not allowed to speak about it. We are, the Minister of Energy says that we are not nationalists. We are not patriotic when we complain. No economist in this country is patriotic. As long as you speak out against this government or you speak against its policy, you are unpatriotic. What we ought to do is stay quiet and take job. And that is not what we are prepared to do in the opposition.
All right, I want to go back to one of the things you talked about, the recommendations by the people for increases in electricity rates. But for a long time, we've been told that we are paying relatively some of the lowest electricity rates in the region and countries such as ours. So what do you think is the solution to that? The people are proposing, they say that TNT can't continue to operate without some increase in revenue, and that will come from what we pay. How do you see a way around that?
I absolutely believe TNT deserves an increase. Does anybody does the citizenry need to pay 167% increase? Businesses, do we need that? Or do we need that in one fell swoop? Couldn't the RIC, or perhaps the RIC could still come and say, look, TNT, we will give you that 160% increase over 10 years or over 5 years, right? But when you look at the economic condition coming out of the pandemic, I mean, we've had over 6,000 SMEs that were closed down. Now, there has been no intervention by the state and no conversation about the state, how much of those 6,000 businesses that have come back on stream. When you look at these businesses employ between 3 to 5 people in communities, and when these small businesses have to deal with that, run their prices up. What we saw during the pandemic is a lot of small businesses close and Neil and Massey start selling doubles. I have no problem with Neil and Massey doing their business, but it's an example of how as the small businesses collapse, you have the bigger conglomerates stepping in because they can afford to run with that type of thing. But the big question here too with TNT is the state, from my looking at the JSC the other day, the state owes TNT close to $1.75 billion, while private citizens own about 300 million. So why it is, I mean, at the end of the day, private sector and the business community is going to be feeling the full brunt. What measures are being put in place for the state to pay up their bills? Look, today, regional corporations are barely ever getting funding to pay for lighting up these sporting grounds and so on. So there's a huge debt to even some of the local government bodies in terms of paying bills for TNT. So did TNT decide, well, okay, we're going to raise these rates, but can we guarantee you a connection in 14 days? Are we going to guarantee you that when we have a surge and I lost my TV and my fridge and my DVD player, within 14 or 21 days I can get compensation? We still have a problem with the ease of doing business where TNT connection could take you up to 1 year in red tape just to get a connection. So it can't be simply just saying, well, look, we want 100, we're going to raise your rates by 165% for commercial enterprises. And Andy, just remember, it's not only the supermarket, the warehouse that the supermarket is going to be putting that goods down. There's going to be an increase in that. There's going to be an increase in the retail space. And obviously businesses will transfer that to the price, the final price for the consumer. And he now has to find money for property tax. He now has to find money for more water. There has been, 1 to 3 to 4% increase in public sector wages. So what's the sense in that? It's just going to be eaten away. How did we get here? That is the question. And the only thing that we have left to do, Andy, we have to find new sources of money. Yes, we cannot continue spending the way we have been spending for years in this country. I can't say you blame one administration for that. We've spent money. But what do we do now? What new creation of wealth have we gotten in the last 7 years? If you can, if I can just poll your mind for a second, there's been no creation of new wealth. Besides taxes, which the government feels we can tax people into prosperity, which would not happen.
And there is the possibility of doing it. It's not that we haven't done it because we can't, because there's no way to do it. You're saying that we have to find the means by which to do it, the streams from which new wealth could come, and they exist?
They exist because what you need, the government needs to re-engineer its financial systems via policy. And I'll just give you a quick briefing on that. We need to re-engage trust and acceptance by private sector and civil society to work with the government. That's the first thing. We need to access affordable finance, Andy. And when I say affordable finance, we need to increase savings nationally. We need to encourage private sector to bring their money out and partner with the state. But the trust issue is what's stopping that. We need to find a way to access more concessional financing. One of the problems we're having here with a lot of the Caribbean countries is that our GDP is so high that money that low interest rate funding, we have come out of the category. So it's making it difficult to get more concessional funding. As a country, as a CARICOM bloc, we need to go back to these financing agencies. They must understand what post-pandemic has left us in, and we need to get adjusted down so we can get more money from the conditional financing that is outside there. And when we get that money, we need knowledge. We need knowledge to figure out what are the areas that we must invest in to get goods and services that we can sell to the international market to bring in this new revenue stream, this new wealth that we need. And you have digital transformation, you have digital products, you have digital financial services, data warehousing. Why it is we can't bring a Facebook, a Google, to Trinidad. We build warehouses for them to house their data because they're going to Ireland. They're going to Ireland, they're going to cold countries because the cost for cooling is very, very expensive. We have cheap gas. We have cheap gas here in Trinidad. We could build warehouses. We can provide them services very cheaply to compete and bring the much needed U.S. currency. So these are the creative ideas that is not coming out of the state this time.
And you've done well in putting some of those as alternatives on the board. Thank you very much, sir.
Every budget. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rushton Parry, Member of Parliament for Mayaro. We take a break and we come back and I'll tell you to watch this as we continue coming down to the end of the broadcast. But stay with us. We'll be back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the program. In these closing moments, we just ask you to watch this as the Christmas festivities approach an end. We take a final look at Parang that occurred in Point Fortin 2 nights ago. Take a look.
And I'm from Paraland Squapo. I always follow Parang, so it's a pleasure to have Lewa in Point Fortin because I'm always in every Parang event. Thank you for having us in Point Fortin. Yay!
And that will do it for us in this edition of the program. That's our broadcast. We tell you you can keep with us, in touch with us here at AM Prime. At WESNCC, check us out on all our social media platforms. You could send your emails to amprime@wesncc.com. We thank you for watching. We thank our guests. I'm Adi Johnson. Have a good day. We see you tomorrow.